Co-housing is an intentional, collaborative community that combines both private homes with generous common facilities that really are designed to support an active and interdependent community life. The advantages there is that each home can be owned by each household, and also that you can finance those units through an FHA or conventional Fannie Freddie mortgage.
Welcome, Alistair. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Thank you. As a UW MSRE alum, I'm honored to be here today and looking forward to talking to you about co-housing.
Great. So we're going to talk about co-housing today. What is co-housing, and can you give us a quick overview of it?
Yeah, I'll start with a sort of definition. There's a lot to unpack within co-housing, but at a very high level, co-housing is an intentional, collaborative community that combines both private homes with generous common facilities that really are designed to support an active and interdependent community life. And it emphasizes more than other types of housing, active participation by the residents in everything from both its design and in its governance as they live there. Co-housing really is nothing new. I think that there's an ancient instinct in that humans have evolved as a social species to live cooperatively together. And there's a lot of examples throughout history of where groups have shared living arrangements. And I think even in the U.S., in our country's history, we have or had a history of very tight communities that really bound the social fabric together. In terms of co-housing with a capital C, I think it really got underway in Scandinavia in the 20th century. Around the 1960s in Denmark, a few co-housing developments had been built, and there were a couple of Berkeley grad students that in architecture that went over there and studied them. They were Charles Jarrett and Catherine McCann, and they studied this model and then brought it over to the U.S. in about the 1980s and wrote a book that was that widely disseminated the concept. And since then, there's been about 170 communities completed throughout the U.S., with more that are forming currently. That's, over 40 or so years, that's only a rate of 3 to 4 communities being built each year in the U.S. So it is a real estate niche, if you like. But the core principles are intentional design of the neighborhood, the extensive common facilities, a participatory process in the development and governance, and also complete management by its residents.
Great. So what are the key features of co-housing, and how is it different from more regular mainstream residential development?
Well, it might be most helpful to bring up a slide here that shows an overview of a typical co-housing development. So I brought along some examples of co-housing that have already been built to give everyone a better sense of what this entails. I want to point out that these are sort of organized from very rural settings to more urban, and you can also from that you can see the range of building types that co-housing can inhabit. So starting off with the rural, this is a development in Vermont, and as you can see that it's on a very large 270-acre farm. So it's maybe more of an agri-village as well, but it is co-housing. And you've got all the common facilities listed on the left, but also look how the houses, I think these are mostly duplexes with 2 households in each building, are all spread out from one another. Um, and as you can see, there's quite a rural setting here. And then the next one is I visited recently. It's up in British Columbia. And this is getting a little denser. So again, units that are in sharing sharing buildings. I think there's 2 or 4 units in each of the buildings. And next slide. Better sense here for the layout, and it mixes in a sort of more stacked flats type building with these more duplex style buildings that are set towards the overlook the water there. Interestingly, this development reused an existing building as its common house, and the owner of that property contributed it to the project and wanted to stay on the land and live in the co-housing once it was built. And from the UK, this is a nice example of we're getting a little more suburban in feel. And I drew this example in because it shows what a wonderful streetscape. So this is almost a publicly accessible street that runs through the middle of the co-housing development. And I think that it's one of my favorite designs. Also incorporating different buildings. We've got these sort of terraced row house or townhouse, if you like, units, but also there on the right, a 3-story flat building. And then locally here in Seattle, in Capitol Hill, this is a very urban setting, and this is a vertical example of co-housing, where you've got just 9 units, but you can see here they've got all those elements of the shared courtyard through the middle. They've got a shared garden on the rooftop, and then on the lower right of the section is where they have a common dining room. So they're able to pack all of that in, plus have a retail unit on the lower floor where the couple that developed the project, Schemata Architects, has their offices. So those are just a few examples of co-housing, and there's many more that you can see online through the Cohousing USA website and others, but just to give you a flavor of the range that co-housing can take.
Good. So how is co-housing legally structured?
Yeah, so I think I've just explained the physical features of co-housing, but it's just as much an organizational concept as well. A couple things before I jump into the legal structures specifically. I just want to point out that there is very much an emphasis on intentional collaborative living. So that means I mentioned the regular community meals, where a household will sign up to do the cooking or the cleaning up occasionally, as well as eating and dining within them. There's usually some planned shared activities and events within the community. And generally, there's mutual support for doing things like the general upkeep of the property, and there may be some benefits in terms of neighbors helping to look after one another's children occasionally, or provide help out a sick resident when they're at a low point and need some assistance. And so the residents really participate more in the activities and the organization of the community, as well as in its development process. So I'm going to speak more about that. But those things, there's just much more of a collective emphasis here. So legally, let's just talk about what co-housing is not. It's not a commune. So these there's no these are all privately owned homes, and there's no sort of multiple households generally don't live in the same unit, and there's no sharing of income. Everybody has their own means of supporting themselves. Generally, it's also not a cooperative or a co-op. That is, those are just a different legal structure where the entity that is the co-op, like a corporation, owns the entire property and then leases back the units to the owners. And that's, you could structure a co-housing development that way, but typically they're not. And they're also not co-living. I know that there's a lot of co's out there right now, but co-living really describes a rental model of people occupying the same unit and sharing maybe a shared bathroom. This, however, this is very much a owner-occupied model, perhaps with a few rental units mixed in. But legally, these are structured as condominiums, generally. That works really well. You can set up an HOA that enshrines some of the community's principles in the condo docs. But the advantages there is that as I said, each home can be owned free and clear, fee simple by each household. And also that you can finance those units through an FHA or conventional Fannie Freddie mortgage. And that's really important. Cooperatives, for example, are quite limited in terms of the financing that's available for them. But the idea here is to work within the current marketplace and structures to deliver a better living alternative.
Great. Well, you've chosen to base your startup company Township around co-housing. What opportunities do you see in this space?
Well, I just see so many benefits to co-housing that address some serious needs within our current culture. Probably foremost, I think this is one of the solutions to an epidemic of isolation and loneliness throughout the U.S., which our Surgeon General has classified as a pandemic. 1 in 3 people within the U.S. who are 45 and older report feeling lonely. And there have been studies that link the health impacts of loneliness to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so I wanted to use my knowledge and skills in real estate and architecture to address something that address a wider need. And I think that co-housing does that. There's also a lot of other benefits as well. The idea of mutual support, I think, fosters meaningful relationships that have been lost in a lot of our communities. And the conventional ways of developing residential real estate aren't really providing for that. But another key aspect of why I think co-housing's poised to expand beyond that sort of 3 to 4 developments a year rate is what they call the silver tsunami, the number of folks in the U.S. that are aging and looking for an alternative to more institutionalized senior living. 1 in 5 people in the U.S. are going to be 65 or older in a few years. It's projected to be 22% of the population by 2040. At the same time, we have a housing affordability crisis throughout our region and the U.S. more widely. And when you combine that with the fact that 3 out of 4 people 65 or older actually own their own home free and clear, there starts to paint a picture that if we could provide those people with a means for downsizing into something that was more appropriate and helpful to their needs, we could probably free up a lot of our housing stock for families, younger families that can actually use that space of those larger single family homes now occupied by seniors. So that's one of the mission aspects I'm most excited about co-housing providing. And I think the options for seniors can be a bit depressing. Co-housing would provide them with support, somebody that they can call on next door, somebody to pick them up if they fall. And just the camaraderie and companionship that I think often seniors living off on their own in a house, lack. They also want to retain control over their own decisions, and living collectively in co-housing can give them that autonomy to participate and regulate their own living arrangement. It frees them of the kind of burden of home ownership as well, by distributing that burden throughout with lots of other people. And I think it can be a more affordable living proposition for them because costs can be distributed as well. And on that point, it doesn't just apply to seniors. I mean, if you're a young family, perhaps, as I said, like the cost of childcare is very high and it's difficult to come by. Having neighbors around, particularly those that might be in an older generation, who might actually appreciate interaction with younger people, could really be a win-win for both parties. There's safety and security to it. People having a community this tight where everybody has eyes into the center, kind of provides the type of security, and if somebody from outside the community wanders in, they're going to be pretty quickly, somebody's going to go out and speak to them and find out what they're looking for. And it can be, I think that living collectively like this is more resilient. If we have a natural disaster occur or something occur where the community can better respond by banding together, they can also better plan for those incidents, and have plans in place. So I could go on, that there's also the environmental benefits. I'm an advocate of green building, and I think that shrinking the living footprint, there's opportunities to create collective investment in things like solar panels and lowering energy costs, combining houses together, much more energy efficient. So there's exciting possibilities for making lower impact communities this way as well.
Good. I can see your passion for the subject. So how is the development process different than that for maybe a townhome or a multifamily development?
Sure. Well, I having worked in that field myself, I know the typical process, typical development, right? It's kind of 101. You go out, you find, maybe you do a market study and you project out who's the market for this development going to be, and you go out and you find some land, and you hire an architect and you do the design, and the developer's sitting there thinking, okay, I think that the market's going to want this, and this is the way everyone else is building them, so let's do this. You hire a contractor, you build it, and then you try to sell it or rent it and you hope for the best. The thing that really excites me about co-housing is that it's you bring the end user, the residents, into the development process, and they are informing it and driving it. So as a developer, you're really working to support that community. So my model is really to go out and to identify the area we want to build co-housing and start building a group. You start recruiting members that are passionate about the concept and can see the benefits. And you start, based on their desires, you start to identify a location, present them with sites. And also, as they are joining this group, they're also contributing. both not only their creativity and their thoughts, but also their capital. So this is a way of almost crowdfunding development, in my view. So there's exciting possibilities for lowering capital requirements to get projects going, but you're also almost live testing your concept with your end user group as you're developing. So I think it actually is a way of mitigating market risk in real estate, that you can be assured that you do have a committed group of people who have actually invested money into the development, before you really incur the substantial costs of construction. So that is an exciting opportunity. However, going back to that fact that there's only been 3 or 4, if co-housing is such a great concept, why are so few getting built, right? I think that's the question most of you would be asking by now. And I think the answer is there's been very few professionals that are getting into this space and figuring out how to make it work, both as a viable development, but also cherish and nurture um, that member-driven aspect, and trying to include the member group in some of the design process, but also driving things forward efficiently with their development skills and expertise.
Good. Well, you mentioned lack of awareness. You didn't start out your career in commercial real estate. Tell us more about your background and how this ultimately led you to form your company, Township.
Yeah, how long have you got? It's kind of a long story. So I'll try to keep it as short as I can. I got started in architecture, and when I was an architecture student, it happened to be in the UK. We did a year-long project about housing in the US, and the location we were to work on was rural Alabama. And we took a trip to rural Alabama and toured around, and I started seeing all these trailer homes stuck out in the middle of fields falling apart, and realized that actually the people that were living in them um, had really a sore deal. They'd bought these homes that are not classified as real estate. They're classified like a vehicle, and therefore they're financed like a vehicle, and they depreciate in value like a vehicle. And I started to, even though I was a design student and I went to a pretty artsy school, I was fascinated by that issue of like, okay, how could, it's really not the design of the buildings that needs to change as much as it is the finance system and the way that you develop them. I learned about community land trusts, and my proposal was really a business model. How can I build these units using a prefab factory, but then also acquire the land and put in place a CLT, a community land trust, and give people access to conventional financing by putting these buildings on permanent foundations, building them to better quality, getting them permitted. So that planted a seed which has never left me, really, which is about how do you build communities that are equitable. And I think from school in the UK, I practiced and got licensed there in London, moved to Japan in 2008, and established my own small architectural practice there. Did lots of did housing projects as well as some office build out type work, and all the time was blogging about my observations about Japanese real estate and housing, and how it relates back to Western practices and how the two are so different. Some of my writing got picked up. Did a podcast with the Freakonomics team about the issue of Japanese housing economics, depreciation. What are the drivers here? Had a lot of interest in prefabrication systems in Japan as well, wood built architecture, and wanted to somehow bring that back to the US. And all these ideas made me realize that they all come back to business. And nothing in my education gave me real tools to be able to put together a real estate pro forma, figure out how to go out and get capital. So recognizing that, and also was at a point in my life where I wanted to relocate permanently back to the U.S. Where I was raised. I picked Seattle and entered the master's in real estate program at UW, which was very attractive to me, both because of the location, but because of the program was a great fit. I completed that in 2017 and then immediately went and worked with Bentel Green Oak, BGO. It was called Bentel Kennedy at the time, and joined their development team. And I oversaw a lot of different types of real estate deals throughout the country, and really just got a great practical grounding in real estate from that. I was doing pretty well, but that bug in my mind about building communities and really pushing the envelope on how you're building, how and what you're building, was always in the back of my mind. And I felt like the timing is right now for me to really launch this concept. I discovered co-housing in the pandemic. I was, like most of us, working from home remote. And I was experiencing social isolation myself, and I'm wondering, like, what does this mean for the where and how we live? And doesn't this necessitate a different model? So I started thinking about maybe there, collective communities of remote workers getting together, co-working during the day with their neighbors, and then stumbled across co-housing and realized, wow, this already exists. It's already been going strong for about 40 years, and I just need to learn more about this. And so I joined a co-housing development course taught by Catherine McCann, who I mentioned earlier. So that was a huge opportunity to learn from one of the few people in the U.S. that's actually done co-housing development as a professional. And yeah, we're really excited to continue that partnership, and try to build more of these communities and get them started at a higher rate throughout this region and also the U.S.
Good, excited to see more of that come about. So you and I met through ULI. Can you share more about that organization and
Sure.
the role you
Yeah.
play in it?
Yeah. I've been a ULI member for quite a long time, going back to when I lived in Tokyo. Sort of fresh off the plane, I found ULI was a kind of community that, as a foreigner working in a foreign land, I could connect with other Westerners, and yeah, gave me for some grounding and develop a group of friends and a network. I was involved in their Young Leaders Committee at the time. And then when I came to Seattle, of course, I jumped straight into the local district council here, ULI Northwest. Um, and I completed their Center for Leadership program, which I recommend for anyone that is in the sort of mid-career range, and wanting to develop skills, to be able to be a better leader within their organization and in the wider industry. I can't recommend that enough. So after completing that, I was looking for an opportunity to lead, and I identified a need for a programming committee. I launched the programming committee and chaired that for a few years. And then off the back of that, I was asked to serve as the chair for mission, for the district council, which I still do today. And last year we launched the Urban Plan program at UW, and which is a curriculum that ULI has developed for teaching high school students and college students about urban planning and real estate development. So I couldn't be happier that is really flourishing, and we're starting to bring it into local high schools this year. And yeah, I continue to find that the ULI is my home within the industry. It aligns with my beliefs, and I find the organization tremendously helpful in terms of the excellent research that they do as well.
Good. And I've heard on the urban plan from the students. I haven't incorporated it into mine yet. I haven't taught that class since John Ailes has been teaching it at the UW. Great feedback from students. I encourage high schools that may be looking at it to consider it as well. So I'll teach it this next
Yeah.
year, and I'm looking forward to it.
And any professionals out there watching this that want to get involved, we're always looking for volunteers. You don't necessarily have to be a ULI member. There's a very short online training process, and then you get straight into the classrooms and engage with the students. And I've done that myself, and it's just a great experience. It's a lot of fun, and it's amazing to see people just get switched on to real estate and to start to see, that they can make an impact as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking about students, so if you had some advice for a young college, almost graduate, or someone young in the industry, what advice might you share with them?
Well, I think it's important to listen to what drives you. I think I was at a point in my career there where I was, maybe climbing a corporate ladder and getting more seniority within institutional real estate, which is, you call the shots, you're the capital. That was nice. But I think you can get to a point where you feel that that's no longer fulfilling, and you can question why you're putting in those long hours. And I think I'm grateful that I had developed a sort of passion earlier, and I think it's important to hang on to that and to let it be your guiding light. At times you may need to go and get more practical experience to develop credibility, etc. But I think it's important to keep checking in on that and to make sure that what you're doing is somehow aligned. And if not, try to tack back into that direction. I'm only in the startup phase of a new business, but I can tell you how rewarding and stimulating it can be to do something like that is aligned with what your personal mission is. So if you don't already have one, I think you need to investigate what that is and try to better define it, and to then figure out how that can align with what you want to do professionally as well.
Good. Well, if people wish to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
My website's at township.build. And that's a great place. You can schedule time on my calendar when we can chat directly there. There's a button. That's probably the best way to just have a chat over Zoom. You're also welcome to email me. It's Alistair at township.build. And we'll put that on the screen, I guess, so that people can spell my name right.
Yes, well, great. No, like I said, I could tell your passion for it. I can tell, it's something I learned new today. There's confusing terms out there. I'm glad you could provide some clarity to people and open up their eyes to something new that they may have never considered, whether they're young professional thinking about going into it, someone changing their career where they're at, someone else, maybe in a later stage of life just wants to move into one of these communities. So I hope you can increase that number from 3 to 4 to something
I hope
more
so.
in the Seattle or expanded area. So
I hope so, yeah. And also perhaps if you're a property owner and you're watching this, and this is something that you feel you could, a way that you could leave a legacy for your property, or if you're a real estate developer and you're interested in knowing more about how you can test out this concept into a wider master plan, I think it could work well to kind of help root a community. Um, Maybe a church has excess land that they want to put towards a higher use. So I'm open to any conversations, and people want to intern or have that discussion as well. I'm very open to it. Please reach out.
wonderful, wonderful. Well, thanks for coming on with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. As I said, it's great to reconnect with the Runstad Center, and yeah, thank you. And great podcast, by the way. I really found some of the episodes very helpful too.
Great. Thanks.